1989, when the United States became the unipolar. You all remember the unipolar moment when we were incredibly powerful relative to every other state on the planet. What the foreign policy establishment in this country decided it was going to do is that we decided we were going to use that awesome military power that we had to run around the world and do social engineering. What we were going to do is we were going to try and remake the world in our own image. We were going to spread democracy here, there, and everywhere. We were going to spread capitalism and economic interdependence all over the planet. We're going to take these institutions that we had created during the Cold War, and we were going to integrate countries all around the world into those institutions and turn them into rule-abiding citizens. But the most important thing we were interested in doing was spreading liberal democracy. And when I say the foreign policy establishment, it's very important to understand I'm talking about Republicans as well as Democrats. As far as the Republicans and Democrats go on the issue of foreign policy, you're talking about Tweedledee and Tweedledum. Right. Just think of the Bush Doctrine. And as you all know, George W. Bush was a Republican. The Bush Doctrine, right, which was enunciated after the Afghanistan War, that was in 2001, and before the Iraq War, which of course was March 2003. The Bush Doctrine said that what we're going to do is going to go into the Middle East, we're going to topple the regime in Iraq, right? We're going to put in its place a democracy, right? We're going to create democracy, get rid of Saddam, create democracy, just as we had done in Afghanistan. You remember? We toppled the Taliban and we put Hamid Karzai in power in Afghanistan. We're going to do that in Iraq, and then maybe we'd have to do it in one more country, Syria maybe, Iran, and pretty soon everybody in the region would get the message. They'd throw up their hands for fear that the United States would come after them, and they'd all turn into liberal democracies. That's what the Bush Doctrine was about. This was Republicans. And of course, the Democrats are no better. Both the Republicans and the Democrats love their color revolutions. What are color revolutions? This is where you run around the world, overthrowing regimes and putting in place pro-Western liberal democracies, right? That's what you want to do. It's social engineering. And of course, it's social engineering in many cases at the end of a rifle barrel. That's what the Bush Doctrine was. It was social engineering at the end of a rifle barrel. And you want to think about what's going on here. You're saying, when you pursue this policy, which me and my friends call liberal hegemony, when you're pursuing liberal hegemony, you're saying you can take this big stick that you have, and you can use that big stick. You can use military force to turn the political tide inside of particular countries in ways that are favorable to you, which is to create a world of liberal democracies. And by the way, you all know the Francis Fukuyama argument in The End of History, that very famous article. For those of you who haven't read it in a long time, you ought to go back and just reread it, because it says a great deal about what's happened to us since 1989. Frank's basic argument was, we defeated fascism in the first half of the 20th century. We defeated communism in the second half of the 20th century. The future is liberal democracy. We got the wind at our back, and it's just a matter of time before every state on the planet is a liberal democracy. As you can imagine, when the Cold War ends and the Soviet Union disappears in December 1991, and we're left as the sole great power on the planet, and people like Frank Fukuyama and people here in the foreign policy establishment are saying the future is a world of liberal democracies, you've got the wind at your back, we're going to pick up that big stick we have and we're going to use it to speed up that process, to facilitate the spread of democracy. This is the Bush Doctrine, right? This is the emphasis on color revolutions. This is what was happening, right? Now, there's a fundamental problem with this approach to dealing with the world. And the fundamental problem is political, right? You know, Clausewitz said, war is an extension of politics by other means. You always want to think about that. War is an extension of politics. What Clausewitz is telling you is it's the politics that really matter. War is an extension of that, right? It's an extension. You don't want to get too carried away with the military instrument. It's politics that really matter. Now, here's the real fly in the ointment that the foreign policy establishment faced. That is that the most powerful political ideology on the planet is nationalism. Nationalism is a remarkably powerful force. Very hard for Americans to understand that, and I'll get to that in a few minutes. But nationalism basically says